The commander regularly visits various sections of the front. This indicates that this particular section of the front requires the utmost attention from the command, a personal assessment of the situation, and decision-making on the spot. If Syrskyi visits the Pokrovsk direction or the Julipole direction, Ilihum, or the Kupansk direction, it means that things are most intense there, and it is precisely these areas that require, one could say, the personal oversight of the commander-in-chief for swift decision-making. And of course, it also serves as moral support for our soldiers who are holding the defense in those areas.
Ukrainian defense forces managed to cut off the Russians from supplies in Kupiansk. Moreover, enemy units that entered the city found themselves trapped in its northern districts. These are the words of Viktor Trehubov, spokesperson for the Joint Forces Group. How do you see the situation developing now in the Kupiansk direction? What is happening in the city? For quite some time now, we've been saying that the Russians' logistics have been seriously disrupted in this settlement.
Gerasimov promised Putin an encirclement in Kupiansk, and he got it. For now, it's not a full encirclement, but at the very least, things are definitely not going according to the plan Gerasimov had drawn up. In the south, in the Borova area, this is the second direction they wanted to use for the direction of crossing the river in order to encircle, to cut off the Kupiansk agglomeration. There, they have not achieved success. In the north, from the bridgehead on our territory, they were advancing, and they had some significant success in directly penetrating the heavily fortified city's defenses. There, too, substantial operational reserves have been strategically concentrated and positioned. From our valiant and dedicated forces, additional and much-needed reserves were found specifically from highly trained and specialized rapid response units in order to effectively and decisively cut off those insidious and encroaching enemy tentacles that were attempting to infiltrate and spread throughout the city, aggressively entering and threatening the stability of the city. And the Russians are vulnerable because their logistics are limited by the river. If you cut off their supply lines in these areas, they are left almost defenseless. The Ukrainian defense forces took advantage of this. But driving the enemy out of their positions, forcing them out of the city, is a very difficult task. We always say that it is significantly easier to prevent the enemy from successfully breaking through our defenses, to not allow them to gain a firm foothold in certain critical areas, than it is to try to effectively drive them out after they have already deeply entrenched themselves and established a strong presence. In
recent times, we've been hearing a lot on social media about the situation around Julipole. How serious is the situation there? Is there a threat that the enemy could advance or even encircle the units defending the city in some kind of operational pocket?
Yes, there is. There is always a threat. Strategically speaking, what ultimately led to the intense fighting in the Julipole area was a certain significant mistake made by our command, based entirely on the erroneous assumption that the enemy would not launch a major offensive, or would perhaps be less prepared than they actually were, leading to this critical miscalculation. Continue trying to advance from south to north. The southern front was being built to counter this direction. It turned out that the Russians advanced step by step in the east-west direction, where it is very difficult to hold the defense. We don't have stationary defensive lines there. They are built in a different direction. As a result, the Russians broke through. They actually reached, more precisely, almost up to... They moved into the flanks and rear of the Julipole group, trying to cut the communication line between Pokrovsk in the south of Dnipropetrovsk region, between Pokrovsk and Julipole. This is the main logistical line of our defense. Well, from here on, everything depends on the resilience of our forces. It was the same yesterday and the day before. There was a certain tactical success by the enemy due to the disorganization of command over the forces in one of the sectors. Such things can happen. Yes, this can happen, but this is not an operational breakthrough. And our forces are trying to solve this problem to stabilize the situation right now by deploying additional reserves to the sectors that have been pushed back. We will see how the situation develops. There is a significant threat of the Russians currently advancing into the vulnerable rear areas of Julipole. However, it is crucial not to conflate this immediate danger with the broader strategic advance towards Zaporizhia that many individuals are often discussing and speculating upon, and the threat at the tactical level to the Julipole defensive stronghold.
Pavel, speaking generally about the enemy's tactics, about the tactics of the Russians on the battlefield, without tying it to any particular section of the front, what does this infiltration tactic, this seepage, look like now, considering that already there is less greenery on the battlefield? Can we say that in this regard it will actually be easier for Ukraine's defense forces now?
Here it's 50-50. Weather conditions and distinct seasonal periods often have mutually opposing effects. On the one hand, during the extended autumn-spring period, the vibrant greenery gradually disappears completely. The terrain becomes more visible. We can see the enemy's movements and their attempts to advance more clearly. But at the same time, they can also see our positions better, our rather thin positions, unfortunately, which they are trying to bypass. The second point is the weather conditions themselves. When it rains, when there's fog, under the cover of which forces can be regrouped. For the Russians, it's an opportunity to carry out another advance. For our dedicated forces, it's a crucial chance to safely evacuate the wounded to the rear, effectively resupply the brave defenders, efficiently rotate various units, and so forth. It's a double-edged sword. Whoever truly uses it more effectively and strategically ultimately wins.
Pavel, I'm looking at the map, and in the central region of Ukraine, the air raid alert is still ongoing. The threat still exists. Let me remind you, according to the latest reports, there are already 2 dead in the capital and about 10 wounded. What can you say about this combined missile and drone attack by Russia?
Well, regarding the significant waves and the precise way the strike was carefully planned. Basically, this isn't the very first time, and there's really nothing particularly new or groundbreaking to add. But look at the routes these same drones and missiles are taking. They approach Kiev from all 3 sides, and now from 4 sides, coming from all directions, from the north, the east, the west, and the south. This critical situation absolutely requires a substantial and significant increase in the overall numbers of air defense systems, at least effectively doubling their current capacity. Yes, and in this particular manner, it effectively prevents us, that is to say, it completely deprives us of the crucial ability to strategically concentrate our valuable air defense resources on the most vulnerable and exposed directions, specifically on the anticipated and expected routes of enemy movement and advancement. Well, it is undeniably a perfectly reasonable and understandable tactic from the enemy's strategic point of view, considering their objectives. But we are ready for it as well. We are also prepared for the previous massive strike on Kiev. In fact, it already demonstrated clear indications of just such an aerial environment, if you want to express it in that particular way.
This Monday, or at least that's what the media are reporting, a meeting is planned in Brussels between NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and Ukraine's Defense Minister Denis Shmyhal. It is not being disclosed what will be discussed. The meeting will be closed to the public. Can we assume what the leaders will talk about? The alliance and the Minister of Defense of Ukraine.
Well, obviously, there are 3 aspects. The very first aspect that truly demands our attention is the intricate course of the so-called peace negotiations, which are currently unfolding between the United States and Ukraine, or perhaps more accurately, between the United States, Ukraine, and Russia. Indeed, I honestly don't even know how to precisely characterize these complex discussions. These negotiations, unfortunately, are being conducted with a significant degree of secrecy. The American side, specifically the American negotiators involved in these sensitive discussions, are actively trying to keep the details and progress of these talks completely secret from their closest European allies. This, in my considered opinion, represents a truly bad and concerning sign, but I sincerely hope that our collective efforts, our esteemed military and diplomatic leaders, will sufficiently and comprehensively inform our valued European partners about the ongoing progress of these crucial discussions. In my view, this farce. The second point is military and military technical assistance to Ukraine. On the third, we will have a NATO summit at the level of foreign ministers, and literally just a single day before that significant event, a crucial meeting in the Ramstein format, which was expertly organized by both Britain and France, specifically regarding the vital assistance to Ukraine. But ahead of these meetings, communication is also necessary, and there needs to be a definition of such key reference points. I understand that at the technical level, most of the discussions about Ukraine's needs and the capabilities of our partners have already taken place. Now it is moving to the decision making stage. Such consultations are necessary ahead of Ramstein.